Hello, I am Chris Westman, and today I want to share with you some mechanics I've been creating for a prototype game called Army of Random. Now, I already have the Unity editor opened, and so we'll jump right in. The first thing I want to mention is that all of these assets were not created by myself. I got all of these off of the Unity Asset Store because I am not a 3D modeler, and even got this guy and all his different assortments from the Unity Asset Store. And the main mechanic we're going to look at right now, or really a system, is a random character generator. And what I mean by that is that this character is made up of several different meshes: his head, his upper body, these equipment pouches. He has a bag on his back. Well, not right now, but he will here in a second. And the lower body and his weapon. And uh, the asset pack was created that way so it could be modular and you can kind of create your own characters. However, I took that a step forward and I just made a random generator. And how this works is I have my character selected here, and on him at his topmost parent object, he has a character generator component that I created. And I was able to actually create all of these buttons and UI elements in the editor here by using another asset called Odin Inspector, which makes inspector window buttons and drop downs and stuff easy to make for designers like myself. And how this works is the most important part of this is the node settings. So this is just a list, and the list contains these different scriptable object node setting, you know, objects, if you will. And each one corresponds to a different part or node on the character. So you can see we have one for the bag, the body, equipment being his ammo pouches, his head, the legs, and his weapon. So we'll open up the first one just so you can see what it looks like a little bit. And the very first thing we see is the type of mesh that we're going to use, whether we're using a skinned mesh renderer or if we're going to use just a mesh filter and a mesh renderer. Since this is a bag and it's kind of animated, we want to use a skinned renderer. And it's not currently assigned, but we'll do that here in a second, and I'll show you how that works. And the next thing to look at is this settings tab. So if we open up that settings tab, we see the node type, and of course we have a bag, and if we open or select that, we can see all the different node types. Most of these aren't being used, just the general ones for this character. And then we have a mesh path. Where does the mesh live inside of our project structure? So right now it just says bag 1, but if we hit this folder, we'll actually see the full path, which is this full length path here. It's a little more complicated than it should be, but as long as it resides in the resources path, that's all we care about, because the system does work a lot faster at runtime, and so that's why it's in a resources folder. So we'll close that. The next thing is the material path. So these are all the different materials that can be assigned to the mesh. And actually there happens to be 3 different meshes inside of this bag 1. And so the assortment between the different meshes and plus all the different material folders brings us to our next thing in the settings, which is our assemble data. And we see this list here that's currently empty. It says possible configurations. And what that means is it essentially takes a combination of the meshes and the materials, and it creates as many possible outcomes that are all different of those different assortments. And you can see that we have the same thing for the body. All of the body parts and all the nodes except the weapon have the same folders. They just have different mesh path folders. And we'll go ahead and hit play so we can assign the nodes, the mesh nodes, and I'll show you how that works as well. So the character generator essentially looks for the different labels of the nodes here, and it looks for, the mesh, and it assigns the mesh. Now you can see right off the bat, right off start, it went ahead and generated all the different possible configurations. And just for the bag alone, it created 84 different configurations, and you can see it's a pretty long list of nodes, and it creates different scriptable objects. And we'll just double click one of those so we can see what it looks like. and it'll open it. Actually, we'll hit this little pencil. And this is what that scriptable object looks like. It has a mesh, and it has a material assigned, and it has a bag type. And that's really the only thing that matters. Click on another one. We see it's a different type of bag, a different type of material. If we don't like that, or maybe we just want to reset the data, we can hit reset data, and then we can collect possible configurations again. We can do this as many times as we want, and it won't matter. If you want to preview one of the meshes, now if you happen to know the index, that's great. If not, you can just say preview next index, and we'll just, well, before we preview the next index, first we have to assign the node mesh. So we'll go ahead down here and hit assign mesh to nodes. Bam, so we hit that button and we saw how the mesh got assigned to this little field right here. So now we'll hit preview next option, and again, we're not previewing everything. We just want to cycle through just the bags just to kind of see how they turned out. And you can see that it's actually going through each bag mesh. So again, there's 3 bag meshes, and it's just cycling through that single mesh and then all of its different material material possibilities, and then eventually it'll go to the next bag and the next bag and the next, and the different possibilities here. Now, we don't want to just look at individual possibilities. We want to see a full-on generation of a completely new character. So what we'll do is we'll hit generate random preview, and there we go. So every time I hit generate random preview, we get a different assortment of all of the different possibilities that can be created. Now, if you want to know how many possibilities, well, I guess you can just multiply the possible configurations with each other to get your maximum amount of possibilities. And that's really about it for the character generator. The next video I will talk about how we save this information and how we can use it at runtime for, say, runtime characters and stuff like that. But for now, the next logical step that I will be developing for this is assigning attributes and, like, say, stats and perks, depending on, say, like the gun they have, or the kind of lower body or upper body they have, or the kind of equipment they have, or maybe their bag. You know, assigning things like armor or movement speeds or distant travel lengths and things like that. But for now, this is all we're working with, and you can see how cool it is. I think it's pretty cool. And thank you. That's all I got.